share the browser. And I apologize to everyone while I share the browser. Technical difficulties. But we are in now. So, okay. So for today's agenda, Scott had an AI.
Sorry, John. I have people pinging me via other Slack. Mary is here from Chicago JAG, but she's not able to join in, and a few others as well. We're having issues, and they are contacting me privately. We need to stop this. So can you check again?
Let's talk about that later. For now, I will let people.
Thank you.
In, if I can find.
Well, both Edwin and John should be able to do this.
Yes.
Edwin's a host too.
I'm just looking at the list, but I don't see anybody.
No, I just had Mary join. That might have been an artifact from before. So as I see people pop in, and Edwin, as you see people pop in, just admit them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So welcome everyone to the October 6th iteration of the MicroProfile Live Hangout. A link to the chat will hopefully be in the notes if someone, a link to the notes will be in the chat if someone can please do that. Add your name to the list of contributors if you are on the call. And this time, instead of everyone's shared responsibility to take notes, I think I am going to try to take notes. Again, I'm prepping for our first steering committee meeting. So on the job training. Okay, so from last week, we had Scott took an AI to create a release checklist for releasing specs. The reason why we wanted to do that is because we kind of wanted to have a dry run vote for voting on specs. And we thought it would be a good idea, to help facilitate a dry run to have a release checklist. So Scott, are you on? Yes, you are. I was wondering if you could maybe take people through the checklist draft.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, where is it?
Here, I can go to files changed if you want.
I'll just look at the raw. It's probably easier. I don't know what comments are being made right now.
Okay.
Can someone share the minutes?
Oops, that's the rich diff. I want to do raw. How's this? Where did the raw go here? Oh, is that it?
I think it's under the ellipses.
It is. Okay, view file. There we go.
Yeah, so far I've just been starting to bring over two pieces of guides, in essence, that we use for the Jakarta process and trying to adapt them to the MicroProfile process. And so the way we do specifications and the voting in Jakarta is that we have a Git repo where the specification teams create PRs. And ultimately that gets integrated in the website. So that's one piece we gotta understand is how we're gonna be promoting or displaying our ratified specifications. Presumably having a GitHub repo is gonna be consistent with that in some way. In the Jakarta space, it literally gets mapped to another repo and built when the website's built. So we'll have to figure out how we do that. But basically this is the first part. So when the specification team is ready to put their specification up for a vote, they vote, they create a PR and these are the checklists that they have to go through in terms of the content that they need to prepare for the specification committee to look at and ultimately vote on. But then if you look at the other checklist, there's each specification PR has what we call a mentor, or someone who's going through, trying to help the specification team manage all the steps. John, can you bring up the other checklist?
Let's go back to, oh, that's the wrong one, sorry. Let's go, I'll just do it this way. Go back. Is that the right one? Pull request, sorry. I had Edwin's up too. That's the wrong one, I think. Here we go.
Yeah, probably just go back to that and then the other file.
And the other file is here.
And so these are all the steps, and there's 13 of them that we go through to verify that the specification content is consistent with the expectations. And when they are, then that's the point that we actually would say, okay, this is ready to get voted on. And so I started to change some of the links to, you know, our OSS staging repository, where our download location is, and that type of thing. But some of those will have to be, you know, verified and make sure we're consistent with a given pattern. You know, how we're going to handle, you know, what exactly. So again, the index metadata page here, markdown page here, is literally the page that shows up on the website. So how we're going to handle that in MicroProfile, we need to define, and then define, you know, how that content's created and how it's submitted as part of this PR. Where we host Java docs, you know, are they going to be part of the new website? And again, how does that come about? How's that incorporated as part of the PR? That needs to be defined. Several other things as you go down are dealing with the TCK, the user guide for the TCK. So, you know, it's a much more stringent process than we have today relative to TCKs. The big one is the compatibility certification request. So one of the requirements that we have is you have to have at least one compatible implementation, and there's an issue that needs to be created with certain information to track that and show that the TCK passed, etc. The summary is part of that, but the things that are truly new to how we do releases is this interaction with the EMO and PMC and the promotion of a TCK to a signed, that ultimately gets signed by the the specification committee and promoted to a new location with the EFTL license. Those are, so basically these last 4 steps are new things, you know, that we'll have to go through and iron out how they work for us. Actually 11 is consistent with what we already do, but you know, so I still need to draft, you know, all of our content that we have on the wiki into a single specification operations guide. I have a couple other questions because today the PMC doesn't play any role really, except for the approval of the original release plan. But the way the EFSP reads is that we also need approval whenever we do a release of specification before we can actually put out the artifact. So I'm in the process of drafting a question on that, how we're going to deal with that. The way we do it in Jakarta right now is you have the project team sends an email to the PMC asking for approval of the release, and then that gets joined with approval from the EMO and the vote from the specification committee. Technically, we're trying to reduce that overhead because in Jakarta, the PMC is actually part of the specification committee as well. So technically their vote should be able to be equivalent to approval of the PMC in addition to whatever technical merits they might be voting on. So we don't have that in Jakarta, I'm sorry, in MicroProfile. So that's the only question is, you know, do we just keep the current process that we have from Jakarta where we have to send an email and get an approval? Or do we want to, you know, think about trying to change that up as well? So that's it. That's where this is at in a nutshell. I mean, it's going to take some time because again, we just found mistakes that we were making in the Jakarta side with the EE9 release in terms of when the specification teams were being notified that they could release their artifacts, because we weren't properly joining the EMO PMCN steering committee, or sorry, specification committee approvals. It's definitely going to be a lot more overhead. We're going to have to go through it and get a feel for how it works for us, and if there's any other changes we can make on the MicroProfile side, to be a little to be as consistent as possible with what we do today. But that's where we're at. So
there's a lot here. So my first gut feel is, I'm gonna add somebody in. Is there a way for the first release we can shortcut some of this, right? So we may not have certain automations in place, or certain, maybe we want to put things in a different place than they are now, and maybe we can keep them there for the 4.0 release. Are there things here that you think we can go through and kind of remove as check boxes for 4.0, and maybe
so the majority, so the majority of this stuff is just what this specification committee wants to see and has expectations of being done before they vote. So it's really just a way to avoid having a bunch of discussion in the specification committee itself relative to what, whether or not we're ready to vote and whether or not there's likelihood of the vote passing. That's what we're trying to get out, is not having a situation where for weeks, a specification needs work and we keep revoting. So that's really what this is targeted to try and streamline, so that once it's up for vote, the expectation it's going to pass, and it should pass in a minimal amount of time. So, you can accomplish that any number of ways. That's what this is driving at. Really the only critical things are basically the 3 approvals and a compatible implementation passing the TCK. So, there's really only like 4 or 5 critical things, that are part of the process. Everything else is just leading up to that. So before 4.0, we can, try and figure out how we can accomplish that.
I want to interject here. Scott, I think it's amazing that not only did you do work on this with this call in mind, but you also sent it to the forum. I wasn't able to see it until right now, and it's a lot of information here. One thing that I want to caution is that we are bringing the work that has been done in Jakarta EE here. And one of the things that we learned there on Jakarta EE8 is that we skipped lots of process, and now the habits are negative to the project itself. I recommend that we are better off shooting for M04, even if it's not November, it's going to be December, but doing our best to put the best processes in place. Processes before substance, because habits are learned by actions, and we skip at one. What is to take that we will skip it the next time? We have 3 months. It means 2 months to shoot for MP4, and most of the work is done. So let's focus on the process and move forward. I am a -1 on cutting corners because we have seen it already. It's a fail, and it will set us to failure for the future. And entitlement.
I challenge that a little bit, Amelia. I don't think that was a failure, and I think that's being way too negative.
Right. So I agree. And I think that we could lighten the process up significantly. When I say lighten, if we scroll to the top, specifically, what we built on the Jakarta side of the fence is a self-serve process where the specification teams themselves are responsible for updating their chunk of the website. So the bulk of the PR process, well, I wouldn't say the bulk of it, but a lot of the PR process is getting them to put the right metadata in a markdown file that then gets published to the website. And so we don't have that. We don't have 35 or 36 specifications. We have, like 7 or 8. And so right now, we're signed up. We actually have a WordPress install that we would need to put these things on. And then, so that's not really something that can be done through a PR process necessarily, because we're not merging anything to a website. And so I wonder if instead of a PR process, it's simply an issue process, and attached to the issue is enough information that someone could go update the website.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's one of the critical things that we need to resolve, because this obviously is
right.
From perspective.
Yeah. So what would people think about simply like we have we create issues in some repo, and right now people will push their final binaries as attachments to their release in GitHub, but I think we should maybe consider that the publishing stage, and they should maybe first attach that same data to the PR.
So I think we could even lighten, even more.
And I didn't mean to say I'm an issue. Sorry about that. I got to correct myself.
So basically, according to the current release process, when we release, for example, we release config 2.0, we already have the a download folder, and then it has all the artifacts like API, JavaDoc, and PDF, HTML, and all the TCKs. I don't think it's already. I already mentioned in the comment. So we don't need to create another a place to host this information. So we directly add a link to point to the artifacts there. I think it's a good idea. Just create a PR and then put a link to the PDF, HTML, JavaDoc, and TCKs. And then this MicroProfile release is simpler than the Jakarta, because the TCK and API and spec are all in the same place. So it's so it's all under the same directory, to be honest.
Yeah, so I agree, and we could so first of all, the staging repository, the Nexus actually does create a numbered directory that is the staging repository, and we haven't been using it on the Jakarta side of the fence. I still think we should, but for example, in Apache, we will publish the stuff to Nexus repository. We will give the link to the actual closed repository, staging repository, that's the numbered one. And that is what's actually voted on. We don't go, hey, look, there is the directory that's the aggregate of all staged builds for the entire world. Let's look at that and vote on it. Because that's mutable, and it also contains a lot of stuff that aren't the things that we're thinking about or concerned with. And thirdly, it doesn't stop mistakes from happening, such as someone publishes some things to their staging repository which shouldn't actually be there and don't get noticed because people, you're getting this link that says, here, do a search for just these things, and you can see them, right?
I agree.
So
if we simply had a link to the staging repository, that would have the majority of the information in it.
Yeah, exactly. And also I recommend, also I put it in the comments already, because I recommend the file and also the path, just use the current format. So that's good enough. So in this way, it's really simple. So it's we have all the information we have.
So how does that get versioned? What I mean specifically is, Okay, we push out. Hold on. I just want to make sure I give the context. You push out, MicroProfile. Sorry, config 2.0. Let's say, right?
Right.
We're beyond that. Someone says, "Hey, there's an issue. We need to fix it. We want to republish that." Does that get republished as a .01?
No. So the Nexus staging capabilities, which we haven't been using them on this side of the fence or the Jakarta side of the fence. When I say we haven't been using them, yes, we have stuff in a staging directory, but we've never referenced the staging directory. We've only ever referenced the aggregate view of all staging repositories in the entire install. Mm-hmm. So it's not the same thing, okay? When you reference the staging directory itself, it'll say something, it'll use your group ID, and then there is a numeric ID afterwards. So in our situation, it would be a link that would be org eclipse microprofile -10000. It's usually a number that starts with 1 and it's it's 1,000 and it goes to 1,000. So if that build fails, fails the vote, you can leave it there, or you can just delete it. Either way, you don't do anything with it because once it's been closed, which is something Nexus has this concept where the repository, the numbered staging repository, as soon as you're done shoving stuff in it, no one else will be able to see it until it's closed. So you wouldn't even be able to put it up for a vote unless it's closed. Once it's closed, it's immutable, it can't be changed. Mm-hmm. And if you don't like that one, you just run the release again. You'll get a new staging directory. And again, the same process. Once you're done shoving binaries in it that you want people to vote on, you have to then close it. You put the link to the staging repository in the next vote, and you'll be able to distinguish the votes by the number in the staging repository. Okay. And on the Tommy side of the fence, we try to put the staging repository number in the vote thread so that if you have to do a reroll, it's very easy to see which thread is the current one, because they happen to be numbered, they happen to increment by 1, more or less.
Do we need to document this somewhere? Is it?
Yeah, that's the point of having a checklist that someone can go through and know what the steps are that are required for release.
This is the conversation, so.
Yeah, so I do want to just do a quick check here. So I am trying to kind of take some notes as we go along in a different window. But the other thing that we had on, I want to make sure that we get to on the agenda, it shouldn't take too long, is the first steering committee agenda, right? That should maybe take no more than 10 minutes. So just a heads up on that. I'm okay with kind of cruising down this route of the checklist draft, if that's where everyone wants to go. That's perfectly cool.
Well, yeah, we also have a topic of that Rudy brought up, which is getting our committer rep, either by just picking one or.
Oh, yeah, right. I think that takes priority over the steering. The steering just needs to be done. I added suggestions.
Well, so they're all related. They're all related. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Before I do that here, okay. So I'll go take a look at the agenda in the other window, and I guess for now I will just leave this up. I guess discuss away in terms of what do we want to do to, my hope is that we can have a vote in November, right? So I think it's October 20th is our steering committee meeting. That's when we do a bunch of votes. Then one of those is, I think, opening a ballot vote for that committer. And I apologize, there's another vote in there off the top of my head. I can't remember. But it's basically tax on a week, right? So if we tack on a week, so that means at the end of end of October, if we want to, we can start the 2-week ballot period for MicroProfile 4.0. right? So what do we have to do to prepare ourselves for a vote between now and what is essentially the end of October, with a release mid-November? And is that too aggressive, I guess?
It's too aggressive. Mid-November, I think we can shoot for completion December.
Technically, we need to get the licenses into our respective TCK and specification files.
Yeah, I mean, some of these issues are checking for that we have the Java docs correctly licensed and we have the TCKs correctly licensed. So that is definitely something we're gonna have to change in our builds.
Yep.
You know, and then beyond that, it's just that we as a specification committee, with that hat on, that we know that we would vote for, we would confirm that all the specs that are part of the release are ready. You know, we'd get into that point.
Yep. So we do have, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat, ribbit. Anyway, so on the Java doc side of the fence, right now we're publishing the Java docs under the Apache license, and we do aggregate them onto the Tommy website currently. We publish all the Java docs. It is fine for us to create a Java doc zip file that has the Eclipse specification license in it and say that that applies to the Java doc, but I would be hard against any source changes of the license files on the Java doc itself. It's okay if we generate Java doc and put them under a specific license. So we will take the same source and generate our own copy of it.
Right, and that's okay. I mean, we're already doing something similar for, you know, like CDI and bean validation for Jakarta EE.
Right. So that's all right. And then our TCKs, they need to be dual licensed. So they need to have both the current Apache license in it and the EFTL. We had a discussion a while back with Wayne to ask if that was okay, or rather just more than Wayne, but it is okay. So that would allow us to publish our TCKs to Maven Central under the Apache license and the EFTL. Obviously, if you don't accept the terms of the EFTL, then you can't get any of the benefits, such as the logo usage and patent protections. But anyway, it still allows people to use the stuff published to Maven Central to incorporate it in their builds without concerns of.
Right. So on that front, technically what's required in terms of, you know, identifying this? Again, to me, this is an unnecessary step on the Jakarta side, but it's not clear to me how it ties into the TCK notification to the Eclipse Foundation. So on the Jakarta side, you know, we specifically sign and promote a particular TCK as the EFTL version. I mean, what is the requirement in terms of notifying the Eclipse Foundation of a compatible implementation when they, you know, again, this is related to that compatible implementation request that we have on the Jakarta side where we're capturing information. What is the actual requirement to claim compatibility and use of the logo? Do we know that?
So David's on mute. Were you going to answer?
You go ahead. I talk a lot.
All right. So there's a get listed process that has the steps that you follow if you want to get listed.
But I don't think, yeah, but what I'm asking, Paul, is it doesn't seem to get to the level of, you know, for example, we don't talk about how you locate that binary, you know, that's a special binary that's signed and all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
that's just something we did on the Jakarta side of the fence to make it easy to distinguish
Right. So that I
all
guess
the
it's
bills that are non-official from the ones that are official.
yeah, exactly. So I guess that's kind of my question. Is it almost seems like to me that is unnecessary. You know, as long as it's whatever TCK version was approved by the vote is sufficient. And then, but I'm not, again, I'm not, I guess the question is, was the Eclipse Foundation tracking in that TCK mail, you know, to convey the rights to that implementation?
Yeah, because the Eclipse Foundation TCK license requires that you send your results.
Right.
And I actually haven't checked that ID in a while.
We've had that discussion several times, and basically my perspective on it is that the person submitting to the Eclipse Foundation should submit the link to an approved certification request, such that they don't have to do any real work other than to say, it looks like you went through all the process.
Okay. Well, so then that's the knockoff, is we have to define what our requirements in the MicroProfile are for that and how we capture it.
Right.
Can we do that here? And can we add that as a documentation in this checklist that is so nicely?
Yeah, it is there, but so the details, the actual template of that is one of the things we need to define. And you know, actually where we create it. So I mean, this definitely should be an agenda item for the first meeting, because you know, this is one of the fundamental roles of the.
Yeah.
Okay, that figures. Right when I was looking at the agenda for the first meeting and distracted, you said we have an agenda item for the first meeting. Can you repeat it, please?
This is great.
It's definitely that we need to define what the format of the compatibility certification request is, what we're going to capture as part of that, and where. I mean, where we do it, it's probably pretty straightforward, because where we do it in Jakarta is the specification project, which we might as well just do here, because in MicroProfile it contains all three elements. Can
I recommend that we hash it via the forum? Like we can even use the thread you launched last night, Scott, and work asynchronously on that, so that when it happens, we are not starting from zero.
Yeah, no, we have much to discuss. I'm going to be creating a few different topics out in the forum. Perfect. And also looking at the comments that people are already making. We obviously have already changes to make, but I guess the big one that I'll have to get straight is how we're going to document the usage of the stage repository and the relationship. How are we going to migrate that or incorporate that into the website? I think that's one thing I'm not clear on, so I'll start a discussion around that.
Yeah, I don't think there is much of a, you know, because our process for, well, first of all, we're not listing any download links for any TCKs or any specifications for the most part on the website. There's a couple exceptions. There's the one exception of the umbrella spec, which we do link in the front page of the website, but we haven't been linking these assets on the website.
Okay.
We have a separate thread that we've been chatting about adding pages that are for specific releases, and the download links would be on the page, as well as a summary of what was in that release. So we could try to make the website more technical. And whatever we create should feed into that. But as I mentioned, it's not a markdown file, an index file, and it's not Hugo, it's WordPress. So we have to feed into what we have. And so we wouldn't necessarily be creating a PR, but we would be creating an issue, and you know, would need different things because we're feeding into a different end goal, which is a WordPress.
In that creation worksheet, I thought there was some discussion about a new website. Are we just going to keep the existing one?
Yes, we are.
Well,
okay.
There was creation. Yes, we're keeping the one we have, but there are threads about improving it.
Yes, and we will create. This is not in the technical side, but a page for the working group will be created to have the Q&A and contracts and all these things. But the page for the projects itself that is a work in process. I think Emily created a template that will be able to feed into anything we want. Emily is here, and I don't think we have the time to go through it. But Emily, if you can send that work to the forum and say, hey, this is what we have thus far, because already Ryan implemented a bunch of the things you created. It needs diagrams and other things, but we can definitely populate on it, because the idea is to have APIs there, but also we can do the TCK side of things and whatever we dream of. And the plan is for the future to make it so that it fully gets updated. Like right now, we use MicroProfile pages to do this, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I will send an email to the Google group.
John, you were trying to steer us towards something?
No. Well, I was just kind of putting it out there. I just trying not to interrupt the discussion. But I just went through and I updated the checklist this morning of the things, you know, in terms of where we're at. I pasted it in the chat. We could take a look at it, you know, after the meeting. But I'd really like to continue to nail down what we need to do to release 4.0, at least from this perspective. Actually, we have 18 minutes left.
So is there going to be a new GitHub organization?
That's one of the questions I had.
Well, we already have the MicroProfile GitHub organization.
It's not organized.
That's not where our repos are.
No.
I understand, but we could put them there.
Yes, we need to transfer everything to the one repo and all the APIs under one umbrella. We have 25 repos and they are not under one house.
We could move them back into the MicroProfile org repo. Obviously, we would need to give admin and owner access to the Eclipse Foundation of that repo, which I don't believe is currently the case.
Yeah, so I mean, how are we tracking that down with Eclipse?
I mean, we can publish to the repos we have in the location we have now for 4.0, and we can improve it slowly over time. But, you know, all of our official spec repos are under the Eclipse org at the current time.
Right.
So there really isn't anything to change there other than possible improvements.
Okay, so I'm going to take a note here. Sorry, I lost where we are. Here we go.
So I think we need to adjust the aggressive schedule to tentative schedule, John. Aggressive.
I think we should still work towards this aggressive schedule. Otherwise, we're going to create a process that's very thick.
I think we will keep it light because we are learning. If we keep it light, it's because we have been doing the work in other projects and we can bring that knowledge to MicroProfile, which is a huge plus. When I say, I want to clarify something that, because Kevin, I feel that you might have felt offended. You are one of the people, the contributors in Jakarta that is doing so much work, educating us, sending written information. So you're awesome. The point when I say we can do better is because we're doing stuff so we can throw some of the weight away and bring what it works lighter. Every single time that we do something, we can improve it. So it's not a complaint onto the thing. It is a, hey, we're doing it. Let's do it better. That's it.
I didn't read him as offended, but Kevin can say for himself.
Yeah. Come on, Kevin. I want to make sure.
I don't think it's an important topic. I mean, Kevin can say what he wants. I think it's an important topic, but
yeah, I apologize. I'm going to try and move forward here just from an agenda perspective. What I'm hoping that we can do is kind of take discussion leads, I guess, you know, people to lead some of these action items. And what that'll basically mean is lead the discussion in the Hangout during the week. Because if we're going to meet the aggressive timeline, we're going to need to work throughout the week in between these calls. So I guess, thanks, Scott, for the release checklist draft. I guess, is there anything related to that you want to continue to take the lead on? And it looks like the GitHub repo is something someone will also need to take the lead on.
Well, but so the question there is that necessary for 4.0? I mean, it doesn't sound like we actually need a new org for 4.0, right?
I don't see why we would need to complicate our lives.
Okay,
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
We can certainly do it, but
Yeah.
That's certainly going to be a complication.
But it doesn't need to be done immediately.
Right.
Right. So
yeah, no. My plan is I'm going to keep chipping away at the checklist and get them to the point that we're actually going to try and run a spec through it to see that it's what we want. Because I mean, my view is that we basically need to see that each spec project knows what to do. Because then once we're there, we should largely be comfortable with teeing up votes.
Right. Well, yeah. So one of the critical things to point out that's different from our Jakarta process is on the Jakarta side of the fence, we had lots of argument, a lot of different opinions about the fact that the TCK specification and API jars are 3 independent things that could all be updated independently, and therefore they're all produced by 3 different channels. The specs come in through a staging repository. The API jar comes from a staging repository. The spec comes from the PR. The TCK comes from a promoted staged repo link. So we have cost associated with the fact that they're all independent. On the MicroProfile side of the fence, they've always been shipped together. And so we can get a lot of that stuff collapsed down to just that staging repository link, because it's going to have in there the Java doc, the TCK, the API jar, and the specification document itself, all within one staging repository. So that really simplifies our process. If you could put together, a a process that just basically is a GitHub issue that we vote on that has the link to that staging repository, Scott, I think that would get us quite far.
Yeah, so that's the first thing I'll look at. So, but are we being consistent in naming conventions and all that stuff in terms of the spec documents?
Not fully. We have been trying, but not really.
So I checked a few. It looks like quite consistent. I will take a to do. I will make sure I will check all of the spec, as I have been commenting on your PRs, Scott. If you have a look at what my comments and etc., and I will further update my comments. I will say is all the spec adopt this naming convention. I think in this case it's much simpler.
Okay,
I checked a few.
I apologize for interrupting here, but I'm gonna request that we go 5 minutes after the top of the hour for those that can stay, because we started 5 minutes late again. Apologies for that. And I still want to get to the committer bullet that Rudy has. So let's continue with this and see if we can give maybe at least 10 minutes to discuss the committer topic.
I have another question for the IP log. Since like we are all the spec under the same org, and then it's kind of each spec will generate exactly same IP log. So can we, can we push the IP log to one under like one umbrella release instead of duplicate in each spec releases?
Well, that's how it would be. So for example, if you have multiple specs under a project in Jakarta, you just have one IP log. So there is a release of MicroProfile at the umbrella project level, and that is what carries the IP log for all the specs.
So in this case, like the individual spec will not need to generate IP log, right?
Yeah, right. So yeah, if you're looking at that checklist item, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything like major that's outstanding, or could we actually move over to the committer discussion?
Well, one quick thing that's not going to be quick, so we won't want to talk about it now, but I saw you have a trademark, logo trademark in the list, and we had discussed not using the current MicroProfile logo as the certified logo, that we would need to make one, and that would have to go through the particular trademark clearance for it to be enforceable as a compatible logo.
Correct.
So we do need to figure out, we do need to pull that together.
But one thing is that in the forum, we decided via the conversation with the EMO that we could do that in parallel, and it doesn't really need to be completed by MP4. We can bring it up later. So we have the time, we have the flexibility, but great. And we will be doing it ourselves. Even though Eclipse could do it for us, we have said, no, thank you, we will do it ourselves. Great thing. Sharon is here, so if you can say that we will table it because we're taking care of it a little bit later. That answers one of the slides here in the checklist.
And just to be clear, this is a checklist. This is the Eclipse Foundation checklist that they provided to us. Yeah, thanks.
I guess the creative work could be done by the community. The registration will still need to be done
that
by
one
the
is
foundation.
done. Yes, everything legal, we will allow, you will do the legal, of course. We understand that. Thank you, Paul and Sharon. One thing.
Let's Paul.
And the didn't wear my MicroProfile shirt today. So there could be some iterations there where we try to register the mark and find out that we can't, and then got to go back to the creative process again.
That's all right.
We know. Don't worry.
Cool.
One thing before we go into the committer conversation is Vince is here, and I will update for Jelastic. Vince, can you update this community on the legal side before we go into, this is super quick.
Yeah, so as of yesterday, I guess, we have signed documentation to be both solutions member of the EF and a member of the MicroProfile working group.
Awesome.
So we're very excited about that. Summers, I know you're on this call, I think.
Yeah,
I'm gonna do a blog post to put out to our community when I get 30 minutes to myself this week.
remember to
not like you just started a new job.
Sorry, again, I'm trying to manage the clock. I apologize. So thanks for bringing it up.
And then for the Jelastic side, they have also already signed the MicroProfile working group participant member as of yesterday. So that is done, and Tommy Tribe has done so too. So we have 3 members out of the minimum 5 required, and already waiting for the invoice to arrive any moment. From one day, super quick turnaround. EMO, thank you. Impressive. Never an issue with legal. Go ahead, John.
Sorry, I heard Atlanta. I heard Tommy Tribe. You said 3. Third is
Jelastic.
Jelastic. Oh, awesome. Sorry.
Yeah, we have 3 done.
That. Okay.
Oh, yep.
All right. To move along. Okay. So for the next item, Rudy, adding a committer member. So technically it's not, I think, required for us to move forward, to having a committer member, but obviously we would like to. So I think one of the things that we'd like to do in the first steering committee meeting, if possible, is to maybe initiate a ballot period for a committer member. But it's going to require somehow either, do we want to have the community vote? Do we want to have the committee members, steering committee members offer an invite to join? What's the process that we want to have for identifying a committer member or potential committer members?
It's confusing how you explained it, John. Rudy, you're here. It's confusing how you name it their committee member. It's very confusing. So we're talking about.
No, it's supposed to be committer member. Sorry, typo.
Yeah, it's just There you go. Rudy, you're here, and your thread is amazing. Go for it.
The committer member will be a committee member, but yes.
Yeah, sorry. Rudy.
Yeah, for when I read that the document, it was for me not clear that if we could operate fully in so that we can take all the actions, all the votes without not having all seats filled. So that was my question, but it seems that it's not required, although we always say that the community and the committees are important. So I agree that we should make it a priority, but if it's from a legal point of view, not required, then of course it's not required, and we can go ahead to shorten the period.
So,
okay.
Actually, could I just say something? Isn't it about electing a committer member, not adding? I mean, it is adding,
yes,
but it's an election that has to be held.
Elected. Exactly, Sharon. Elected.
That's what I get for typing while moderating a meeting.
You're doing the work, and it's amazing. This is why you get feedback, John.
And just to kind of, before it comes up, because I think it requires clarification, we need to ensure that the folks that we've started to work with this past week are able to supply the necessary legal agreements so that they're actually committer members, so that they can actually run in the election if they decide to allow themselves to be nominated by someone else or declare a self-nomination. So there's some a timing issue there that we need to be sensitive of as well.
Yeah. So what is it, the 6th? And if we wanted to have our first vote up, let's just say, a month from now, we could potentially have a 2-week period where we push to get people to sign their independent agreements. And then those would be the initial eligible, at least this year's eligible people for a vote. We could potentially start having a vote, 2 weeks in the future, 2 weeks in the future after we've had a period of collecting agreements. And then we could just have a committer vote of who's ever been able to get their agreements to go through. And then they get, and if you're a little slow on your agreements, then you get another shot next year.
Yes. I have something to add on this. We have 56 committers. MicroProfile has 56 committers. Some of them are dormant. And I wonder if we have, this is a question for Sharon and Paul from the EMO. Do we know how many of those are independent that we need to reach out for them to sign the individual agreement, or not yet?
You want to take that, Sharon? I will.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we do. We've gone through the records, and I believe, Paul, it was 8 individuals that we've reached out to, letting them know of the change, and that with the inception of the working group, that now they would need to become individual members if their organizations do not want to join the working group. So we've started that process, and it's 8 people that we've contacted.
Excellent. And there will be another one, there will be a 9th, because Edwin is about to become the newest. That will be 57. So Edwin, you get to sign the newest agreement. Thank you so much, Sharon. Can you write into the agenda how many are they, like, as a part of a EMO update? Because it's so important.
Yeah, sure.
They will know out of 56 that are 8. Now it's going to be 9 with Edwin. Just let's add Edwin in there. And the 8,
What do people think about the idea that we give like 2 or 3 weeks for people to get their independent agreements turned around, and then we start an election at that time?
That's one.
John, you're on mute. I'm sure it was gold though.
It was gold. You didn't catch that? So, no. Yes, I mean, that sounds like a good idea. And what is the voting mechanism for that?
Let's use Eclipse, and later we can add our own. We don't have the time to. Rudy also did a really good work with Rudy did a really good job with it. But with all the things we need to tackle, we can bring this up in 2021, because I want to request something from the EMO.
That was too quick. That was too quick. When you say use Eclipse, do you mean
the eclipse forums, the eclipse method of choosing a committer. We mentioned 3 months ago that MicroProfile will create its own transparent process where we know exactly how many members are eligible, how many members for the nominees, how many votes each nominee got, and things like that.
We could just have a vote on the list.
Well, here's the question: should it be a private vote? Because you're going to be voting on people in public.
We should have a private vote, but everything, all the tally, the inventory should come up to the public. And my question is,
hold on. Considering you've already congratulated somebody for getting commit on a vote that's already in progress, I think that they're not quite private.
Exactly.
Well, when it comes to voting for people that want to be the committer member, I guess what do other working groups do with that?
I would say with the Jakarta, they only share the percentage.
Actually,
hold on. It's the mechanics. I'm interested in the mechanics.
Sharon, go ahead.
Sorry. So mechanics in terms of how the voting happens. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. If we have 3 people that are interested, how does the actual voting happen? Mechanics.
Right. So keep in mind that the voting, how the vote is done is the SVP process. So every phase of people voting actually starts to indicate who's going to win. So that's a calculation that has to happen. And we're actually using a third-party system that actually does that all for us. So up until the vote itself, everything is done on the mailing list. So all the nominations are done on the mailing list. We then create bios for everybody. That's done on the mailing list. And then the only piece that's done through this third-party voting system is when the ballots are actually sent to those who can vote. Once the vote concludes, then we can post the percentages of folks that actually voted.
Sharon, and one of the things that I personally do not like is just the percentage, because it doesn't provide the percentage for the ones that didn't win. It only provides the percentage for the ones who won. And I wonder if there is a way to improve this. Otherwise, we will create, and we could just pay for a process to keep this open and transparent, as we like all the processes in MicroProfile to be. Can this be adjusted so that, imagine that Edwin, I'm throwing you here.
Well,
I'm going to nominate Edwin if he doesn't nominate himself. So either way, he will be in the ballot.
Hold on a second.
For the record, the process that Sharon outlined is fine with me.
Yeah. The third-party tool, did you say it was? I thought I heard you say it sounded like something like ranked choice voting. You said SV.
I think hang on, just let me, yeah, I may have referred to it incorrectly, and I don't know if I can bring it up. Paul, do you remember what it is? It's the method by where if you don't get enough votes, then you're out of that phase, and then the next vote starts.
Transferable vote?
Pardon me? Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Vote? Yeah, I was right. SVP.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Almost
cool.
Right. S3.
Yeah. That's what we use to do the Apache board elections, and it works great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
so
go ahead. Sorry, Deb.
Amelia, to explain to you on this one, this style of voting makes it really difficult to say who voted for whom, because it's not simply I have one vote, I pick one person, and then I'm done. It's you make a list of the people. If there are 30 people running, you say rank them, you sort them in the order that you want them to be. And if there are 3 open seats, only 3 people will get it. So let's say the vote for the first person is completely split, but the vote for the second person is like very unanimous, right? If you voted for somebody on the first person and they don't get the seat, basically your choices kind of shift down, right? And your vote isn't wasted. So basically your second, third, and fourth become effectively your first, second, and third, because your first choice has no chance of winning.
And so that's why I use a system that calculates this as it's going through, because I don't know that I could do it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's depending on the number of people you're dealing with, right?
So it's difficult to disclose how many votes someone got, because it's not straightforward in that regard. However, it is fair such that, you know, like in U.S. elections, if a third party runs, it usually means that one of the two parties is going to take a hit.
Okay, and I'm going to interrupt. I apologize. We're literally even over our extended time by a minute. So. And
I have to drop for another meeting. So thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. Before I give the call out, and Sharon, you can drop for this.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Yep.
Thanks, Sharon.
For next week's agenda, I do want to cover one thing that Edwin posted, which is a platform spec PR. So during the week, please take a look at the platform spec PR, anything around the spec review process checklist. And I've got an agenda for the first steering committee meeting in the meeting notes as well. So take a look at that. And with that, I guess I will say thanks everyone for joining, and I'll see everyone in 1 week, same bat time, same bat channel, and see you online in between.
John, who is going to send instead of the first steering committee invites? I added some suggestions, or do we tackle it next week?
Let's see if we can tackle that next week. I mean, we don't know who to send it to necessarily, because we don't know who the primary and alternates are yet.
Exactly,
so
we don't know.
That's one example.
I will copy paste a bunch of the things here and do that.
It will be public anyway, so once the invite goes out, everyone just get your butt there.
Sorry, I'm trying. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Okay. Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.